You know I'm right. Nick Durst here with Joe Calabrese. And Joe, very excited for our guest today, a 2008 inductee into New Jersey Comedy Hall of Fame. And 2015, he won the Bob Hope Comedy Award. And listen, the reason I know who Mike Marino is because a few weeks ago with my wife, we went to Carteret, beautiful Carteret, New Jersey. We checked out the Real House Husbands of New Jersey, and of course Mike was there, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But Joe, I kind of gave it away, but tell everybody who our guest is today.
Yes, Mike, and you can find him pretty universally, Mike Marino, live on all social channels. You can find him on YouTube, you can find him on Instagram, you can find him on Twitter. He is a stand-up comedian, and he's also a sketch comedian. And he's best known for doing a web show live from his mother's basement. He's also done stuff in the past, such as Make America Italian Again, and again, giving it away, but real old school Italian from in and around the area, somebody who we can sink our teeth into and we can get along with really, really well. Incredibly funny, real great personality. And yes, we did give it away, the both of us, but Mike Marino, it is now your turn to step into the conversation. Welcome to You Know I'm Right. How are you doing today? And thanks for doing this with us.
It's a great introduction from the both of you. I appreciate that. It's funny how that we met like that, because I don't know if you guys came to the next Saturday after the show that Joe was in, was my show.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you came to both or just the first one, but that's how that actually happened. I wasn't even supposed to be there, but Joe Gorga and I are starting to do some shows together. We had done some shows prior, and I'm also friends with Michael Martucci, the guy from the band, and Bill Spadia. So everybody's like, hey, why don't you come down and hang out? So I was just backstage hanging out. All of a sudden he goes, why don't you walk out on stage and do some time? I'm like, okay, I'll do anything to perform. You know what I mean? So that was fun and helped me sell tickets because I was there the following Saturday. And
very nice venue, but it's in a weird place.
Well, you know, that area had a fall from grace. It was kind of a great neighborhood. Then it became a bad neighborhood. And now they're trying to make a comeback. And they started with the theater because that theater is brand new.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful place.
Carteret Performing Arts Center. And hopefully it'll go where it's supposed to go, because that's 1,600 seats. They cut off the back so you wouldn't see that there's like 600 seats up there in the balcony.
Yeah. See, I was smart because I figured they wouldn't sell out. I bought seats like really in the back of the balcony. I got upgraded to the floor. They're like, you want to sit in row 4? I was like, yeah, maybe I want an aisle seat. So I row 16, but I pay for the balcony seat. So that's the way to scam the system right there.
Yeah, you go. You got bumped up to first class.
Exactly. Mike, wanted to ask you, I mean, obviously, we just came off the biggest eating holiday of the year for Italians. So Christmas Eve, Joe, we speak about it all the time on this show, but I mean, there's really nothing like it. So how was your menu? How was your Christmas Eve?
I spent Christmas Eve and Christmas Day here in the basement of the house I grew up in by myself.
Wow.
And it sucks. One of the things that I really feel great and happy about is seeing you guys, as young as you are, taking the tradition, whether it be comedy, whether it be serious sketches, whether it be a podcast, but talking about your heritage.
Yeah.
Whether you guys all get along or whether you don't get along, whether you call it sauce or gravy. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can curse on your show, man.
My grandmother called it gravy, but we refer to it as sauce.
All right, well, whatever you call it, carry the tradition forward, because this is the basement. That's my grandmother's refrigerator. That's my great-grandmother's statue of Jesus. That's why you never did anything wrong, because he's watching.
Right.
And it scared the crap out of you when you were a child, because the eyes do move and they're blue. It's scary. But down here in the basement, I'm actually sitting at the kids' table. That was the adults' table. And as you start growing up, the people start to disappear because they're moving on to the afterlife.
Right.
And if you like me and you miss the tradition, the old school stuff, you kind of stay in it. But all you have is your memories and your pictures, and hopefully entertainers who will remind you of what it was like. So although we weren't going to do what we did a long time ago because of people got older and they passed away, this COVID made 30 people who were getting together for Christmas Eve go down to 20, go down to 15, go down to 10. Then they said, you know what, screw it, don't come over. And that's it. Now, a lot of my family members that I'm close to are no longer with us. And my dad is down on the Jersey Shore. My brothers are on the Jersey Shore. I'm in North Jersey. I'm closer to you guys than I am to them. So I just decided, you know what? I just got off 3 cruise ships back to back. Who knows if I have COVID, if I don't have COVID. I get tested every month. Am I allowed to curse on your show?
Go ahead.
I get tested every fucking Monday. And tomorrow I'm getting the booster. I don't know why, but I guess I have to because I want to go to work. So it's sad. But I remember when we were younger, we would say the only way to get to the adults table from the kids table is when somebody dies.
Yeah, I mean, Christmas Day, me and my wife were sitting at the kids table. The youngest person at the kids table was my wife at 28 years old. I don't want to graduate over to the adults table.
Well, that's an excuse not to sit with your wife anymore, honey. I gotta sit with the older people. But it's nice to see you guys talking about it. And everything in this basement, this house has been in my name now for about 25 years. My parents were here for 55 years. So all the antiques and all the memorabilia is from my family, who is from Italy. So my mother and her brothers and sisters, when they spoke broken English. My mother was the only one that was normal English. But they came from a school of, they rode donkeys to school if they went to school at all. They're Bruzzese. They have a dialect that most other Italians don't understand. And they called them the mountain guineas, the blondes with the blue eyes. So, when people ask me, is it real? I'm like, no, it's real, all right. And we always said gravy because my mother said, gravy is with meat sauce. There's meat in it. She put her brajioles and the sausages and the porks and stuff like that. So that was gravy. If she said sauce, it was because in her dialect, she said marina or marina, which meant it was just marinara and it was plain. But we never had that.
So I want to ask you where your family is from, because my last name is Calabrese, so obviously from Calabria. My mother's Sicilian, and my grandmother was actually Barese, so she's kind of from the north. So I kind of wanted to ask you where your family is from, and unfortunately, we don't like to hear that you were alone on Christmas. So hopefully, the company that Nick and I can provide you here kind of makes up for a little bit, talking about us. But where is your family from, and what do you guys usually do on Christmas Eve? Because we laid out the seafood platter every year. This year we had everything. Had bacalhau salad, had regular fish salad, had the squingios and the sauce, which is great. Lobster tails are always great. The one thing that we didn't have this year is the mussels, and I'm a huge mussels guy, and unfortunately doesn't necessarily agree with my mother's stomach, but I want to hear about some of your traditions, Mike.
Oh, great. I'm glad that you guys got that tradition going on because, you sound like my family. This is the way they talk. This is what they say. And this is what they ask, where's your family from? My father's side of the family's got Sicilian blood in it, but not a lot. And I never really knew a lot about my father's side. My mother's side, I know everything. My mother comes from a small town in Campobasso called Duronia. Campobasso. Most of her brothers and sisters, when they came over, a lot of them went to Canada because for some reason or other back at that time, they couldn't make it into the United States. My mother's oldest brother had 2 kids, and my mother's oldest brother died in Italy at the age of 26 of the flu. His wife, Virgilia, never remarried. So those 2 kids who were older than my mother, were my mother's nephews, they were all in Toronto, Canada. You want to talk about an area where there's so many Italians and they're fluent in Italian. They live in Toronto, Canada. So my mother has blonde hair, blue eyes. So did her sisters. They all died very, very young with diseases that these days would have been cured in no time. And I actually have my great grandmother's passport. She came over from Italy when she was 80.
Wow.
And there's a lot of intertwinings. And for some reason or other, and I do remember my mother saying this, when me and my two brothers were kids, I don't ever want you to speak Italian. She would go like this. It's the enemy's language. You're Americans. And she would do that. Now I wish I could say to my mother, Mom, you could have been bilingual. But they didn't. And I knew a little bit of Italian. So when I did visit Italy and I would go to Rome and places to, touristy places, I would speak in my mother's dialect, and people out there would say to me, you're better off speaking English. I don't know what the hell you're saying. I'm like, really? They called us bastard Italians or mountain guineas.
Yeah.
But the tradition was, yes, Christmas Eve was always at this house. Christmas Day was always at this house. My mother and her sisters would sit here and they'd make everything. And then the next day, that's when everybody came. I, oddly enough, out of everybody in my family, am allergic to seafood. I don't eat fish. I can't even look at it. Anything that comes out of the water, I'm going to the hospital. So I don't touch none of it. And everybody in my family knows. So mommy would make broccoli gavadil or broccoli and cavatelli. I don't even know how to say it in English. Gavadils.
That's it. I think.
Gavadils. I owe you.
You got it close.
And I would go to the furthest room in the house and I'd sit there and eat by myself, but I liked it. And then, of course, Christmas Eve, if you remember back in the day, that's when you heard your parents go into the attic and grab the toys and stuff them under the tree.
Right.
Don't you miss it?
Absolutely.
I bet you any money you guys do like we do. On Thanksgiving, what do you have before you have turkey?
Lasagna.
You never even have the turkey. Fuck the turkey.
Nobody wants the turkey.
Turkey.
Nobody likes turkey. You deal with turkey once a year. On Thanksgiving, there have been days on Thanksgiving in the past where we've made ham, and believe it or not, my family has made duck. I love duck. I would much rather have all the side dishes and everything else besides the turkey. Nick agrees with me.
Right.
I hate Thanksgiving food.
One of my original stand-up routines always came from imitating my family. So when I was a little kid, this would be my Uncle Tommy, my dad, my mother, my aunts and uncles, whatever they said, I would say, and I would get laughs. So sometimes it's nice to see all the comedians impersonating their family, doing it on Instagram and doing it with face things that changes their face and stuff like that. That's all great. Sometimes I feel like saying, look, it's not original. Entertainers have been doing this for 100 years. He used to be a very famous Italian comedian. His name was Father Guido Sarducci, and he was hilarious. We all do stand-up from the family because not only are they funny to us, they're funny to everybody because you have somebody like that in your family. My Uncle Tommy was the funniest guy. We always thought he was in the mob. He pretended he was in the mob. He wasn't connected. He didn't know anybody. He used to say the funniest shit. And he goes like this. He goes, if you don't eat the bacala, your mother's going to give you a bacala. Which means, that was you're going to get hit.
Right.
Right. And those things were so much fun to listen to. And that's what came up with a story that's in my new pilot. And it made me come up with this idea that my mother always used to say, I'm getting too old. So next year, I'm not cooking for Christmas. I can't do it no more. Somebody else should do it. And at that time, that's when Polaroid cameras came out. So she would say, tell your uncle to take a picture of this. I ain't doing it no more. So I came up with, that's the way Jesus stopped having the Last Supper, because his mother said, I'm too old. I can't do it no more. Call Leonardo da Vinci. Tell him I said, paint a picture of your friends eating. This is the Last Supper. And that's how it happened. So, you get jokes like that.
Yeah. So obviously your family was an inspiration for you as far as comedy, but when did you decide maybe I could pursue a career out of comedy?
I've been an actor since I'm a kid. I never really wanted to be a comedian.
Mhm.
When I was like 3, 4 years old, I would always impersonate TV commercials. So I'd watch a commercial and I'd go to my family and say, oh, I could do it too. And then when I was 10, oh, I could do it too. So kindergarten, first grade, second grade, you name it, at school, I was getting on stage. When I was 13, 14 years old, I was in acting school. When I was 16, high school band teacher knew that I really wanted to be an actor. So he took me to a school in New York City. And I went to Herbert Berghoff Studios. But I started doing TV commercials when I was about maybe 16 years old.
Huh.
So technically, I grew up in television. I showed somebody last night a commercial I did that became an award-winning TV commercial when I was 19. It was for United Airlines. The commercial had names in those days. It was called the Green Marine. So I was on my way home from boot camp in the commercial, and it ran for 5 years. And I was nominated for a Clio.
Wow.
I didn't win, but I ended up doing tons of TV commercials, hundreds. Don't forget, when you have blonde hair and blue eyes in the late 70s, early 80s, you're going to get an M&M commercial. You're going to get potato chips. I was in the commercial when Pringles first went in the tube.
Wow.
But I never wanted to be funny. So I went to the American Academy and I was studying theater, did some movie roles. I was on As the World Turns for a year. And then I went to California during pilot season. I was supposed to be one of the characters in Dirty Dancing, was going to be a TV series. It never hit. And I kept meeting people out there who kept saying, you guys from New Jersey, you just sound so funny. And I actually would get mad.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? I am a serious theatrical actor. No, man, did you hear how you sound? I'm like, no. So I started doing impersonations. I always did. And I wanted to be De Niro. I wanted to be Pacino. I wanted to be,
You wanted to be somebody.
I wanted to be somebody. I wanted to be like all those great Italian actors.
Yeah.
And Vinnie Barbarino. Who am I thinking? Vinnie Barbarino. That was the character name on Welcome Back, Kotter. This is way before you guys, but who played Vinnie Barbarino? Staying Alive. John Travolta.
Saturday Night
And
Fever.
so I was imitating these guys, and a friend of mine took me over to the Comedy Store, the famous Comedy Palace in Hollywood. And the lady was watching, and I went to go do my audition, and she said, that's not funny. Stop doing the impersonations. Tell me who you are. And I'm like, well, okay. So 6 months goes by and I went on that stage and I was frustrated because I wasn't making any money anymore. I wasn't the apple pie face doing TV commercials anymore. And I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I'm figuring I might as well move back to New Jersey and work in construction with my family. So I went on stage and I said, you know what? Fuck this, fuck that. I'm sick of playing the Irish cop in the Italian movies. I am Italian. I am real. I'm not Irish. I never even been a cop. I commit more crimes than half you motherfuckers. And I was doing all of this shit. And I walked off the stage and she says, come here, I want to talk to you. And I says, what? And she goes, that's what I want. That's who you are.
Yeah.
And I go, okay. And she goes, do just that. Stay here in California. I'll make sure you work here. And she was actually sitting next to Andrew Dice Clay.
Wow.
And I looked at him and he looked at me and he goes, you're the golden Guido. And I'm like, thank you. And that's what started me in stand-up. That's really how that happened.
Wow. So for you, you've done a lot of different mediums, but the biggest differences for you between you're just doing stand-up, let's say in a club on a stage versus, doing stuff on TV versus social media versus podcasting and acting. For you, what do you think is the biggest difference, or is there something that is fundamentally the same about all of them?
No, it's all different. Very, very different. I always want to work in television. I'm always going to want to do movies. I'll never stop doing stand-up, because there's no greater feeling than being on stage in front of 1,000 people or even 30 people who are hanging on every word that you say because you're going to bring joy into their lives. I mean, I've stood in front of 10,000. I've stood in front of 5. There's something about that exhilaration that makes you feel a euphoria that you ain't going to get in sex. You ain't going to get it in food. You ain't going to get it in, and I don't know what. You're just so damn high. It becomes an addiction. I don't do drugs. I've never been whacked out. I don't go see a therapist. But talking to you guys makes me happy. Being alone on Christmas Eve makes me want to jump off a fucking building.
Yeah.
So the addiction to perform is in me. It's never going to go anywhere. And I think that's the majority of the reasons why most live performers won't stop. Because it can be a rough road. Could be one of those roads where, you know, you get divorced because you're traveling too much. Who's insecure? Who's not secure? Did you make enough money that week? Who knew COVID was going to come?
Yeah.
I'm very, very lucky. I've earned my living as an entertainer my whole life. There were years where I would have to get a part-time job, many years, but I was taught that. I went to a school that said, be prepared to get your ass kicked. Not everybody's going to like you. And you're going to have a survival job because, you know, we didn't have the internet.
Yeah.
Now, luckily, I have sponsors for my show live from my mother's basement. And, you know, sometimes we put them on the shirts. Sometimes we put them in the ads. Sometimes they come on tour and you brag about this. But like I said, I've been doing commercials since I'm such a young kid. I know how to write the commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I wanted to ask you because you do sketch comedy too. And sketch comedy is different in the sense, you know, maybe closer to TV where you have something written down on a piece of paper. Now, there's no way you're going to know that somebody enjoys what they're watching or finds it funny until you act it out, until you perform, right? So how do you get over those hurdles of either writing something for yourself or having something that's written down, presented to you, and trying to translate what's on the paper out into the real world and trying to make that funny as opposed to something that kind of just comes to your head? Because you know, it's very evident that Nick and I find you naturally funny, and your humor is something that is right up our alley to begin with. But you know, to use an analogy, you know, your flavor is not going to be a flavor that maybe not somebody else necessarily likes, right? So how do you translate what you see and try to make that funny to somebody else?
It's years of honing a skill to see what everybody else sees, then you talk about it. That's basically the way you could be funny in an area where you think your element, being an Italian from New Jersey, might not work. Like if I went to the South or a foreign country or to an area where people might not even speak English, because that happens on cruise ships. You could sit in front of 1,000 people on a cruise ship and some of them might not speak English, but there's a way to make them laugh. It's your mannerisms and your cadence, they call it. So in the beginning, you're going to open mics, which I don't even know if anybody even goes to anymore because you can do shit on the internet. But you would go out every night, 3-4 places a night to practice a joke in front of people who are drunk at a bar. It makes you tough, but it never really lets you know whether the joke's funny or not, because the majority of people waiting are comedians waiting to go on stage and they're thinking about their own thing.
Right.
But when you have an opportunity to be a live performer and you're going out 5 times a week to paid gigs that you're doing what you're doing, you're going to make shit up in front of the audience, something that you never even thought of. It just comes to you because you're free. You become so free that I'm not worried anymore. I know I'm going to find something that's going to make somebody happy. So for instance, if you go on a cruise ship, and the audience is international. They're from around the world, and they're all going to Cabo St. Lucas. When you get to Cabo St. Lucas, I go on the island and I take a look around. Whatever I see, they see.
Yeah.
So when I go on stage that night, I'm going to say, hey, I went to go buy 3 t-shirts for $5 in that store. They're all going to go, oh my God, that's right. It was shit that we bought, shit. But we want to go home and show people. So once you start talking about it, they're going to take the ride. Plus, believe it or not, people have an affection around the world for Italians from New Jersey. That you can't beat us. You cannot beat the attitude. They can't take it. So I'd say, I don't know when it was, let's say 4 months ago before the summer, I went and did 10 shows in Dubai.
Wow.
I didn't even know if I was going to, I'm like, they speak English? But they make you the offer. You say, you know what? Screw it. I'm going.
Yeah.
Get on a plane, 15 hours on the plane. You're 15 hours on a plane you never heard of. It's called Emirates Airlines. And they feed you 4 times. And it's a double decker. There's 400 people here and 400 people here. These 400 people are like in poor seats. And up here, you could take a nap in a shower. It's unbelievable. Whoever saw that?
You get your own bed.
They do. And the staff is hot. The chicks were hot. The guys were hot. They had their hats on. They're looking badass and shit, right? Who knew? But they feed you. And you have to take your mask off to eat.
Yeah.
And then you put your mask back on. So 400 people take their mask off and eat and put the mask back on. Okay, I'm cool. And then I get to a place where it's 120 degrees and it never rains. But they know how to make it rain because they have some shit that they put in the clouds and they make it rain. They say that their poorest hotel is a 4-star. We stayed in a 5-star, but they have a 7-star.
Jeez.
And I don't know what their money's called, but it's called something. So now there's 1,000 people in this room. The opening act was from Ireland. The other act was from Spain, Barcelona, Spain. And then I got to go last because I'm the headliner, right? So I went, I don't have to pay for nothing, but I went to a bartender and I said, I just want to know how much is the Coca-Cola, a can of Coca-Cola. And he said what it is in their money. And I said, what does that transfer into American money? He said $8. I go, it's $8 for a can of Coke? He said, yeah. I said, okay, now I have my opening line. So here you go. I go on stage and I'm telling all these people dressed in sheets, a lot of people from India, a lot of people from England, Spain, all around the world. And they're rich. Everybody got a Lamborghini. It's fucked up. So I went on stage and I went just like this. I'm Italian. I'm from New Jersey. I just spent $15 on a can of Coca-Cola. I'm stealing something from your hotel. And the place went wild, because they're like, oh my God, he's one of them.
Yeah.
And then I went on like this. You don't ever charge a guy like me $15 for a can of Coke. That means I got to take at least $500 worth of televisions.
Yes.
Because that's kind of the way we think.
Yeah.
You've thought of that.
Right.
If you ever went to the Borgata in Atlantic City and you lost some money gambling, you start looking at shit like, well, I got to take something.
Yeah, I mean, some of those hotels, they give you a free T-shirt to make up for things, but
that's how that happens. That's a freedom that I've become, that type of a comic. I have my A game in my pocket if I want to do it. I got my B game. Now I like making shit up in front of the audience that I might not ever do again. Then I talked about COVID. And I said, you know, it was great that we all sat on the airline and took the masks off and had lunch because, you know, COVID can't get you when you're eating. It only gets you when you stop eating and you stand up. So don't stand up, just keep on eating.
Absolutely.
And it's stupid. So it makes people laugh.
So I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned the cruise lines. How'd you get hooked up with those? To me, cruising is my personal favorite form of vacation, but for a comedian, I mean, it looks like you guys always have a great time. I'm assuming you get your own room that's not with the crew. You get to go around the ship whenever you want when you're not performing. You go into the islands and, you know, you free reign at the buffet and whatever you want to do, it seems like.
I'm fat as shit. I never thought I would do cruise ships. I didn't think I was going to be the type of comedian that could pull it off. I don't know, about 10 years ago, they had the auditions for the cruise lines, and the agent that I was working with said, why don't you give it a chance? You might like it. You can't curse, you can't swear. You got to do a 45-minute clean show in the beginning of the week and another 45-minute clean show of a completely different routine at the end. So you got to have an hour, 2 hours really of stand-up comedy. So I said, all right, I'll give it a try. And I booked every cruise you could think of, from Princess to Royal Caribbean. Some of the ships, you get an exquisite room, you get paid a lot of money, and you go around the world. Where do you want to go? And I got to the level where I was picking and choosing.
Wow.
So I have a lot of friends that do the ships. And so I signed a deal with Royal Caribbean to do one ship a month, which was steady income. And mostly I wanted to go to just hot areas like the Bahamas, Cancun. But you can go to England, they fly you, you get on the ship and you go around Europe, you go to Spain, you go to Italy, you go wherever you want to go. Do you want to go? They send you. If you got an audience that they like you, you're going to get to go. It's always crowded. And then I actually like going to Alaska because you'll learn about a completely different way of life. Those people really live off the land still. The air is so clean, your lungs breathe differently.
Yeah.
And you can taste it. It tastes like candy. There are times where you go to Alaska and it's always daytime.
Yeah.
You heard of that? It's wild because it could be midnight and the sun's up. And you're going to see whales. You're going to see sea lions. You're going to see the dogs that pull the sleds, the Iditarod. You wonder why people live there. You learn about lumberjacks. I mean, I'm really lucky when I think about it. I've been all around the fucking world, getting paid to go. Right. Whoever thought I'd go to Dubai? And I want to go back.
Yeah.
And now that I'm doing shows with Joe Gorga, I called him up. I'm like, hey, listen, I got an idea. What the fuck? And he's cool as shit. And we've been rehearsing. We're doing a lot of work on his act, and that helps me with my act. Whatever.
Yeah, I don't want to get to Joe and Mo up here, but what's it like when you're doing a cruise out of Bayonne? You know, your people. Is it just like more energy for you, easier to do the stand-up?
Oh, I never even been to the Statue of Liberty till I started cruising. And all you have to do is say that to the people. I'm like, you won't believe that. Did you see that? It's the Statue of Liberty is right over here.
Yeah.
Because most New Yorkers and people from New Jersey never even been there. It's like, oh yeah.
Only on cruises do I say it.
And when you go on the cruise out of Bayonne, it's the first thing you pull out of the harbor.
Yeah, it's incredible.
So, yeah.
So, but with Joe, how did you guys meet up? Have you known each other for a number of years? And did he come to you and say, hey, Mike, I want to kind of do stand up. Can you help me here?
It was a couple of years ago before the pandemic. And I was working with a manager, and he knew somebody who was friends with Joe. And he said, Joe would like to start doing some stand-up comedy. Now, I never really watched the show that much. All I ever really knew was when his sister Teresa flipped the table from a long time ago. I didn't even know the show was still on the air. So he and I met for lunch, and it was kind of funny because people were coming up to me going, excuse me, I'm a big fan. Can I get an autograph? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Okay. And then people came up to him and they go, hey, I'm a really big fan. Can I get an autograph? And I'm like, who are you? What do you do? What show? But it didn't matter. He seemed like such a cool dude. And I figured, okay, well, let's give it a shot. So he came over to my house and I said, what do you got? And I said to him, you really just got to talk about your life. You're on a show. So people are coming anyway. Yeah. And he did. And when we went to go do the first show, it was successful. And then the pandemic hit and we didn't do anything for quite some time. And then some other people called me up and said, hey, do you want to do this with Joe? He's going to go over here. And I said, sure, let's rehearse. So I got together with him a lot to say, hey, man, this is the way you structure a show. And he pulled it off. And then he pulled it off and he's still pulling it off. So the booker decided to call the show Jersey Boys, which is me and Joe Gorga. We're going to find a female host. And in January, we have 3 shows. February, got 4 shows. We're going to do Atlantic City. We're going to do
Yeah, I was
Boston.
going to say, Joe's probably going to be down there at AC. So come to go to the show, Joe.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go.
We're going to be at Harrah's. I want to say it's April 9.
Okay.
I don't think tickets went on sale for that yet. We're going to go to the
For the
Wilbur
springtime.
Theater. There's a lot of theaters that I've actually done by myself. So it'd be really great to go back with him, because I'll bring 50% of the audience. He'll bring 50% of the audience, and they're going to get a banged out show.
Absolutely.
You know, and it's funny. He called me the other day, and he's on his way to a Christmas party. And he goes, I need some jokes. I got to roast this guy at the party. And I go, well, I don't think that's fair. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, and he goes, come on, come on. So it's this must be some kind of a game that they play, that they roast somebody that they know at the party. So I said, all right, do this, do that, do this, do that. He goes, yeah, okay, that's great. And you can hear his wife, Melissa, going, that's cheating. I'm like, I'm going to get in so much trouble touring with this guy. They're going to end up blaming me for everything that goes wrong.
Mike,
I'm not married. I'm single. I could do what I want.
We might end up seeing you in the background on the next season of The Real Housewives, because I'm sure they filmed Joe's first show, and I know they were filming the Caroline's, right? So
Yeah, they did. They filmed at Caroline's. I don't know if I got in there. They filmed, of course, when we were over at I forgot what one, the one in Long Island.
yeah,
Governor's Comedy Club. That was a little strange, but then he went on to Chicago, and when he went to Chicago, I couldn't make it, but I was like talking to him every other hour, and he killed it. And his fan mail went through the roof. But you know what? Stand-up is really just like anything else. Not everybody likes the same thing. So you guys love fish. I can't have fish. You might like pasta. I might like spaghetti. It's just one of those things.
sure.
So he posted the other day that he and I were going to be touring, and that we're calling the Jersey Boys. We're going to be in Atlantic City. And some guy writes, I would never pay to see these 2 guys. They suck. I'm like, how did I get acquainted with that? 2 guys? Wait a minute. But I don't respond. I used to when I was younger. And I know Joe's smart enough not to respond. But you really feel like saying to the person, were you ever really at a show?
Yeah.
Have you ever really come to a show? And usually they haven't. You know, I got a fan letter a couple of days ago, and some lady was angry that I didn't take a picture with her. So her and her husband left. And I wrote, and I said, but it's not easy, because sometimes there's a line of people who want a picture.
Yeah.
You just have to wait. It's not that I'm not taking one with you. You just got to kind of wait. And I don't do pay me to meet and greet.
Right.
I meet anybody. And now you could go to a showroom and they'll say to you, you can't meet and greet. You have to go out the back. COVID. No.
Yeah.
And then they get mad at me. I'm like, it's not my idea.
Right.
Shit, I sell shirts after a show. You think I don't want to stand there and sell Marino 2024?
Exactly.
I gotta get rid of this shit.
Okay. You call yourself a presidential candidate, right? But the 3 of us know they're never really going to put an Italian in the White House. That's never going to happen, unfortunately. If you did run for president, who would be your running mate, though?
Joe Gorga.
It would be you and Joe?
Would that be funny?
It'd be great. Unfortunately, like I said, it's never
The
going to happen.
Housewives
They'll just
fans
never
are
put an
so
Italian.
crazy. I think Joe would bring you a lot of votes.
You know what's wild? In 2014, maybe 2011, I went on this talk show, the Byron Allen talk show, and it was one of those things when he just said, so you think you could be president? And I talked about whacking Osama bin Laden. Now, I had done it before the show, and I had done it when it was Osama Hussein, who was giving us shit, right? I had no idea what I was headed for. That clip got 14 million views, and I started selling out places. And then I recorded it, and then I stopped doing it. And then when I went to go do other shows, people were getting angry that I wasn't doing the joke. And I said, but I got all this new stuff. Oh, you got to do the joke. So it's kind of like you go to see Springsteen, you want him to do Born to Run, but he might not do it and you get disappointed. So I figured, let me make it a web series. So I grabbed some of my Italian comedian friends and we made Make America Italian Again. I bought the rights to it. We made shirts. We made the series. We were winning awards. We won best script at a film festival for this one called The Pizza Guy. And the pizza guy comes to the house. Supposedly we're having a sit down. And all I want to know is how did he know where we were? And that's the joke. So we interrogated him. We gave him money. He thought it was a tip. We threw him in the bathroom. And he kept saying, I didn't know where you were. The phone guy told me. The phone guy. I'm like, who's the phone guy? And it's so stupid, but you can't stop laughing because it's funny, right?
Yeah.
We win best script. I went to go get the award and I go, there was no script. We were improvising. We were just fucking around.
Yeah.
Because when you're with a bunch of guys who groove, it happens. So we were supposed to do another episode. We stopped because of the pandemic, because in California, where my place is out in LA, if you shoot something, you have to have an insurance policy that if somebody gets infected with COVID, they're not going to sue you.
Yeah.
It costs more money for that than it does to make the project.
Yeah. Not worth it.
So we stopped. But I'd have a whole new script. And I asked Joe, would you be in it?
Oh, that's great.
And he said, yeah, fuck yeah, let's do it.
Awesome.
I'm like, this is going to be nuts because there's so many ways you could do shit like that.
Yeah.
I could put you guys in the show. And one of the jokes would be, you know, I'm in Staten Island and I'm looking to put a hit on somebody. And I heard he was on the island. You guys would be like, yeah, but this is Staten Island. It's really not an island.
Right.
You know, just something like that.
Yeah.
I go,
Sounds
yeah,
like a good idea.
yeah. And who are you guys anyway? We got a podcast, huh?
That's a podcast.
All right.
But that's the way these things happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, before I left California to come home for the holidays, I work with Robert Davi. You guys should look him up. Maybe he'll do your podcast. Robert Davi's been in a shitload of movies. He's a famous actor, but he does a Sinatra show and he sings like Sinatra, does the Dean Martin music. He's also friends with Dina. Dina Martin is Dean's daughter, who I've been touring with as well. So he's singing at this place, Vibratos. Hey, Marino, why don't you come down, open for me? So we go over to Vibratos. We're having some fun. And then you meet all these big muckety mucks that are in the room that make movies. And make, you know, it's, yeah, muckety mucks. I think I got that from the Honeymooners.
Yep.
The guy comes over to me and goes, were you ever nominated for an Emmy? And I said, no, I've never been nominated for an Emmy. He goes, well, maybe you should. And I go, well, I don't know anybody at the Emmys. He goes, you do now.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh, motherfucker. What's your name, buddy? And he said, Mancuso. I go, you're Italian? Hook a brother up. Hook a brother up.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to send them an album from 2006, which is, I think, one of my best albums.
Oh, I hope that works out for you.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say is your, I'm right moment? So what I mean by that is, at some point in your life, your career, you wanted to do something. Maybe other people are telling you, Mike, you can't do that. You got to do it this way. This is the only way that can be done. And you said, you know what? I'm going to do it my way. And ultimately, you will see why I'm right.
Sadly, or maybe graciously, that happens a lot.
Yeah.
It happens
Especially in
a lot.
comedy.
It does, because everybody wants to tell you what you should do. And in your mind, you're like, no, I'm right about what I'm doing. Let me be me. And a lot of people, like agents and managers, they'll try to stop you or they won't help you. So that's happened in my life many times. You want me to pick one specific?
That doesn't have to be specific. You could generalize it, but so what do you think? It's just basically, you wanted to kind of do something one way with your comedy, and then maybe everyone's saying, that might cross the line. Is that something that might happen?
Yeah. I did sketch comedy on the Tonight Show for 10 years with Jay Leno. I got on the show because I auditioned for a casting director as a stand-up comic. And he said, I don't hire the comics, I hire the sketch actors. but I think you're funny and I think you're a good actor. So why don't you do some sketches on the show? And eventually we'll tell Jay that you're a stand-up. And I figured, well, okay, this is the way to get in. So if you look, and it's on YouTube, you could see this. I was on the Tonight Show hundreds of times. So I was doing all these sketches. You know, you get your script in the morning, in the afternoon, you tape it. Maybe you do a live one, you're a plant, and you could be doing it with a star. You could be doing it with Jay. You could be doing it with other actors. So after 2 years of doing many, many sketches, no one was allowing me to do stand-up. And I was like, wow, this is sad, because you got to make a decision. Do you cause friction to get stand-up and then get fired as a sketch comedian, or keep your mouth shut because you're actually on the Tonight Show?
Right.
So I kept my mouth shut, but I went on the Martin Short Show, which was another talk show in the same area of Burbank, California. So I got on the show by an audition. I walked out on the show, and I was probably in my early 30s. And it was the first time I did stand-up on television. Phyllis Diller was in the green room because she was being interviewed as well. If you guys remember Phyllis Diller, old world comedian from back in the day. And one of the guys on The Sopranos, I forgot his name, but he just started working on The Sopranos. So I do the show. Everything is great. Tons of fan mail. No such thing as the internet. And then I went back to the Tonight Show to do a sketch. And the stage manager says to me, I saw you on the Martin Short Show doing comedy. You are fantastic. Why are you not performing on this show? And I'm like, do you all talk to each other? I wanted to be on the Tonight Show. And she goes, well, why don't you just say? I'm like, I did.
Yeah.
They never put me on the show. 10 years stand up, but I was doing sketches. So I never said anything. And then I go on Byron Allen. And the casting director there wouldn't put me on the show. So I don't like your work. You're not right for the show. And I begged for a year. Well, he got fired. And the new guy went in there, was the doorman at the Laugh Factory in Hollywood. He was my buddy.
Yeah.
And he became a producer on the Byron Allen show. So he says, hey, Mike, come down here, do that Italian stuff. So when I did it and they were recording it, the joke started to cause thunder in the audience. I could feel it. So I stood up and I got out of the chair and I hammered it home. The whole cigarette bit is what my father used to do. My father would do that. And look what happened. What if I had done that on the Tonight Show 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Right.
But it's people. So that's, you know, I'm right. See what happened? You know, I'm right. Look what I did. Told you.
Right.
And I was supposed to get a development deal with that network. It didn't happen, but look how close.
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned the stuff with Sinatra and Dean Martin before. And very interesting you mentioned the Tonight Show stuff, because this is my last question to you, and I'm going to try to kind of mix everything in and get you into answer one last question. So I have a really deep old school appreciation for like all those old comedics and stuff related to the Rat Pack and everything, because my father used to own all the Dean Martin roast VHS tapes, and I used to watch them when I was a kid. And I used to watch people like Don Rickles do his thing, one of the funniest of all time. One of my favorites is Richard Pryor. Another one of my favorites is Rodney Dangerfield. All these people used to go on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. You know, so I always have a very deep appreciation and love for that old school kind of, you know, comedy where, you know, men used to be men. You don't really see that anymore, right? So I wanted to ask you, maybe not necessarily your favorite comic, but who were comics that you were growing up with, and then when you started getting into the business, who you had a really deep appreciation for, who kind of inspired you? Maybe not necessarily they were the funniest to you, but somebody you really respected their style. And with the Dice Clay mentioned before at the top, I was going to mention to you, you do remind me of Dice Clay, right? So I'm sure people have talked to you about that in the past. So in terms of having deep appreciation for certain comics, how also difficult has it been for you to kind of carve out and do your own original authentic thing? Because when you do comedy, I think a lot of fans kind of compartmentalize and they always say like, oh, I want to listen to somebody or I want to watch somebody who's similar to somebody that they, enjoyed previously. So who do you have a deep appreciation for and a respect for? And how do you allow yourself to do your own thing and not let somebody else's work kind of bleed into your own?
When I first was listening to comedy albums, old school albums, it was Rodney Dangerfield. I always loved Rodney Dangerfield. I used to impersonate him as best I could. I have his albums, and then George Carlin. But I wasn't a big fan of George Carlin. I thought he was a great stand-up comedian. But it was Rodney Dangerfield that I wanted to be like, because he had a crazy career. He started out as a comedian. I mean, that's not his name. I can't think of what his real name is. And then he stopped doing stand-up. He became a salesman for whatever you put on your house. I forgot what it's called. Aluminum siding. I think he lived in New Jersey. And then it wasn't until, like, let's say, he really broke out in our eyes when he was in Caddyshack. But he helped comedians like Andrew Dice Clay. And everybody loved Andrew Dice Clay. You wanted to be like Andrew Dice Clay. Andrew Dice Clay's real name is Andrew Silverstein, and his persona is that of an Italian from Brooklyn, or a Brooklynite, really. And who didn't want to be like that? His rival and best friend back at that day, I used to go see do stand-up with Sam Kinison. But when you watch the Dean Martin roasts, that to me is stand-up comedians, because they all love each other.
The gold standard. It is the gold standard. I suggest anybody watch those old videos.
All right. Well, how about I show you something? I'm going to blow your mind. You ready?
Oh boy, here we go.
I think you're going to like this more than anybody. His daughter, Dina Martin, sings her dad's music. So did his other son, Ricky Martin. And Louis Prima has a son, Louis Prima Jr. So when they toured, the sons of, the daughter of, I was the opening act.
Wow.
This is the closest to the Rat Pack anybody's going to get to, because it's the kids of the legends. When I toured with Dina in Las Vegas, she would tell stories, and I would sit there with Robert Davi, Joe Mantegna, Joe Piscopo, a lot of other legendary comedians. She started doing the roasts. 3 times the Dina Martin roast. One time was Vinny Pastore from The Sopranos, Big Pussy.
Yep.
One time was another guy, I forgot, he was in the military, but he was an actor. He was on a very famous movie. I can't think of what it was, but the last one was Joe Mantegna. So when it was Joe Mantegna, since I know him from work that we were doing in California, I got to do what I wanted to do on stage in front of thousands of people. And to prove it, here you go. This is the collection of the Dean Martin roasts, the real collection.
Oh, wow.
And if you see right there, that's the letter from Dina saying thank you for being part of it.
Oh, it's so cool.
And this picture is all the people that were in the roast. Hold on, let's see if we can't get a shot. But this is a letter from Dina saying, hey, Mike, she recently sent me a Christmas card. She never misses my birthday. So this is the closest to Hollywood I think anybody can get. So this is the collection. See, it's autographed by her. If the pandemic didn't hit, they were going to start up the series in her name. So here's the last roast. I think you could see me in there.
Wow.
Yeah, it's incredible.
This was at the South Point Casino in Las Vegas. So doesn't have everybody's name, but it was the man of the hour was Joe Mantegna. And in the picture are some of the celebrities that are in that show. He was on Criminal Minds. Joe Piscopo. There's Dina. There is a lot of other actors. Everybody's name is escaping me. I feel really bad because it's going to come to me. One of my favorite comedians is this guy right here. Tom Dreesen. Tom Dreesen. He opened for Sinatra more than any other comedian. You can look that up on the internet. He was on the Tonight Show more than any other stand-up comedian from when it was Johnny Carson. One of the nicest guys. He just wrote to me the other day because he'd like to be on my podcast live from my mother's basement. Lou Martini Jr., who was in The Godfather. He's right here. And yeah, I think this is really cool shit. There's two of them. I'll let you have one. I got two of them. And the other people in the cast, other than Dina, are on that series, Criminal Minds.
Wow.
Isn't that wild? I never opened
That's
up the
amazing.
collection, but that's all the roasts.
I love that. I'm so happy that I got the opportunity to ask you that, and I'm so happy you got the opportunity.
I'll lend it to you. It's pretty
I
cool.
love that. Absolutely love that. Yes, hopefully one day I'll come by and I'll give you some company. That way you're no longer by yourself. So Mike, we thank you for doing this with us. We really appreciate this.
Got it, man. Come to the show.
This is we're gonna come to a show. I promise you we will come to your show. Let us know in the springtime when everything kind of starts to die down and places start to open up, and I think COVID cases are better handled. You know, we've seen this current spike here recently, but I think that'll be taken care of. But absolutely would love to come to a show. We promoted you at the start, but if there's anything else you would like to share, or if there's anything else you would like to say, you know, we always give our guests the last word, so go right ahead.
Christmas movie.
Mike,
Yeah.
thank you so much again for doing it with us.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
I got a movie out right now. It's on Vizio. It's been put out by Mar Vista Pictures. It's called Four Cousins and a Christmas. And it stars Robert Davi, Nick Totoro. The girl who plays my wife is Terry Polo. Terry Polo's from all the Meet the Fokker movies. And four young up-and-coming actresses who make up the cousins and yours truly. So it's called Four Cousins and a Christmas. It's on Vizio. It's a nice Christmas story. But those people like what I'm doing, and if everything goes great, hopefully in the spring, I'll be doing a TV series called Growing Up Grand, which is about my life, leaving this little town to go pursue my dream in Hollywood, only to come home all this time later because the family can't do without me. And it's all based on what's true, because the truth is always the funny. Everything else is at Mike Marino Live and MikeMarino.net.
There you have it. So that's going to do it here for this episode. If you know I'm right, for our very special guest, future Emmy Award winner, Mike Marino, and himself, Joe Calabrese. I'm Nick Durst, and this has been You Know I'm All Right.